Welcome to Tidbits from Acts of the Apostles. I'm Dr. Paul Petersen, and we are now in chapter 10. Chapter 10 tells the third story of an unusual conversion and baptism. In chapter 8 it was a eunuch from Ethiopia. In chapter 9 it was persecutor Saul who became Christian and an evangelist himself. And now it is an Italian. We are in Caesarea. Caesarea was since the year 6 AD the seat of the Roman administration of Judea. Already the Phoenicians had established a fort along the coast, and Herod the Great had rebuilt the old city and its harbour, named it in honour of the emperor Caesar, Caesarea. It had then the name Caesarea Maritima to distinguish it from the many other Caesareas that were around in honour of the Caesar. Cornelius would most likely have been of Italian origin. The Roman consul by the name of Sulla released around 10,000 of his slaves around year 138 to 78. That was his life span. They got Roman citizenship and all took the name of the family of Sulla, that is the name Cornelius. Cornelius was a centurion, that was a leader in most cases of a group of 80 to 100 soldiers. Now Cornelius was also a devout man who feared God, and most likely he belonged to a group that has been roughly labeled as God-fearers, that is, people who believed in one God, who adhered to the Jewish diet laws and kept the Sabbath. And he also was a good man by showing by his alms to the poor in the Jewish community, as well as in relation to his prayer life. This is a person that God speaks to and gives him a message, a vision, and he sends for Peter. The funny thing is, of course, he doesn't know why. He's just asked to send for Peter, and this he does. Around the same time, Peter himself is living a little further south in the city of Joppe or Jaffa, and there, as he enters the flat roof to pray in the middle of the day, he receives also a vision. That vision is a peculiar vision. He is asked to kill and eat of a large variety of unclean animals. We find that in verse 13. This is only a vision. The purpose is not to have Peter change his dietary customs. It is to let him see that when God declares something for unclean, God has the right to do so. That this is a vision is evident from the fact that he's actually asked to kill these animals. Now, he follows the men that Cornelius had sent to get him. He does that according to verse 20. He came without objection, without hesitation. That is the English Standard Version. That is the unlikely translation, because actually they are only moving back the next morning. So it was not without hesitation. However, it was without objection, without discrimination, because some of these people were Gentiles. So Peter walks, that's the way they did, and he arrives in Caesarea. Now there is a very funny incident. We find that in verse 29. Peter is welcomed by Cornelius, and then Peter recounts what happened to him, that he was asked to come, and then he says, So when I was sent for, I came without objection. I asked then why you sent for me. And this is the interesting thing. The two men met, and no one among them at this time had any clue why they were to meet. Cornelius just followed order. He obeyed the command by God to send for Peter, Simon, in Joppa. Peter likewise followed God's command, and Peter thought that he had been sent for by Cornelius. So when Peter realizes that Cornelius has not sent for him for any particular reason, that is, to heal somebody who was sick, there are several incidents accounted for Peter's healing in the previous chapter, then Peter realizes that he has been sent there by God for one reason only, that is, to proclaim the gospel. Cornelius was a God-fearing man. He was a good man. He had a personal relationship to God through prayer. He showed it by his benevolence, his giving alms to the poor. But he had not heard the gospel. So Peter begins preaching, and what he preaches is the gospel story, the story of the life, the ministry, and the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. He adds then the task, the command to the church to proclaim that gospel, to be witnesses of the resurrection of Jesus. And then something remarkable happens, and that is described in verse 44. While Peter was still saying these things, the Holy Spirit fell on all who heard the word. The believers from among the circumcised who had come along with Peter were amazed, because the gift of the Holy Spirit was poured out even on the Gentiles. In other words, the Holy Spirit took the initiative to call for Peter and to prepare Cornelius. They didn't know why they were to meet, but Peter realized that when they actually met. And the Holy Spirit now continued by taking initiative. The normal sequence would have been baptism and then the outpouring of the Holy Spirit. However, in this case, there was a hesitation, a discrimination against the Gentiles, and Peter would maybe not have performed the act of baptism. So therefore, the Holy Spirit, by sharing its gift with these Gentile believers, indicated clearly to Peter and the Jews who followed him, I, the Holy Spirit, have accepted the Gentiles into the community of Christian believers. And Peter understood that message and declared, can anyone withhold water for baptizing these people who have already received the Holy Spirit, just as we have? And then they were baptized. So, this is the story about the initiative of the Holy Spirit in the outreach mission. He sets the way, he takes the initiative, and the Holy Spirit pours out his gift upon Gentiles in order to make it clear to the church that there is no discrimination. And so there should be no discrimination within the church, where all believers are to be one, old and young, male and female, free man and slave, Jew or Gentile. We are all to be one. So the Holy Spirit himself declares.